All right,
Cool.
thanks for that, Daniel. We'll start off right away. Welcome again to our second Pioneer Prep webinar, college panel. We had a similar event last year, and we're glad to see another good turnout this year. And so I'm Evan Liu, one of the founders of Pioneer Prep. I'll introduce myself a little bit more, and you'll learn a lot more about the rest of the team in the coming slides. But first, I'll give you a little bit background about our service, right? So again, we're Pioneer Prep. You have the website link here and our Gmail here. But essentially, we founded it as Vincent, Daniel, and I as high school seniors, freshly graduated from Stoga last year. Um, and it's because after graduating from high school, we kind of noticed this lack in the market of finding college counselors who like had relatable experiences. I know a lot of us went through the whole process, um, meeting with older counselors, hearing advice from kind of outdated advice from people who we felt didn't really know what they were saying, especially given like the changing format and nature of college admissions. And so we decided, hey, maybe we can add some insight. So last year, for the 2023-2024 application cycle, we managed 10 class of 2024 seniors. Um, we have all the schools that they ended up going to listed below. And we were pretty proud to announce that they had basically 100% acceptance to reach schools and programs. So we have some testimonials here. I'm not going to bore you by reading them all, but for sure, if you're interested, they're also on our website, and you can definitely take a look at the recording afterwards and just read through. A little bit about the format for the webinar today. We'll start just by going through our own personal stories, giving you a little bit of background about ourselves. We'll share a little bit of advice, general advice about high school, how to approach life in general, and college admissions. We have some pre-submitted questions that were written down, and so we'll tackle those first. And then, of course, the live Q&A is at the end. Throughout the meeting, you're welcome to drop any questions like in the chat, in the Q&A box, or you can wait till the end and then raise your hand or drop questions in. We'll be happy to answer them anyway. Daniel mentioned that the webinar will be recorded. Um, and so without further ado, I'll hand it over to Vincent.
Yeah, hey everyone. Glad to be back. My name is Vincent. I'm also one of the founders, along with Daniel and Evan of Pioneer Prep. I currently go to the Wharton School at UPenn. A little more about me. I also went to Stoga since like I went through the T school district since like kindergarten. I'm studying finance and business. I got 1580 on my SAT, and my interests are mainly in business and economics. But in high school, I also did a lot of math, computer science, and like leadership, and athletics, and service. And in particular, these extracurriculars included like sports such as cross country and tennis, a lot of academic extracurriculars including DECA, research, and entrepreneurship, and of course, big like math olympiads such as the AMCs, and volunteering and mini-thon and peer mediation.
I'm next. Hey everyone, I'm Daniel. I'm currently attending Princeton University. A little bit more about me. I came into Princeton majoring in public international affairs, but currently I'm actually switching my major to molecular biology. And if you have questions about that, you can also ask. But I decided that I was more interested in a pre-med path. And so currently I'm pursuing a pre-med path um, through the molecular biology major. My test scores were 1570 on SAT. I got fives on 17 AP exams. And my SAT, back then when there was SAT subject tests, I got 800 on the math test and 800 on the biology test. And into some of my interests, in high school, I pursued leadership, service, biology and healthcare, and law and public policy. And if you go to the next slide, just some of the things under those categories that I did. Some notable ones, I was student body president of my school. I also participated in a Pennsylvania program called the Pennsylvania Gunnery School for the Sciences. That was one of the most impactful programs I did over the summer. And I also was president of the Mock Trial Club. And so were the notable things I did in high school.
All right. Well, a little bit more about me. Again, I'm Evan. I'm a rising sophomore at Yale. A little bit of background. I think I entered college like very split between pre-med and pre-law, and kind of confused. I think even now I'm still a little bit confused, but leaning towards the pre-law track and thinking maybe to major in ethics, politics, and economics. In high school and in now, I think my interests were kind of split very widely, and so I was interested in like law, writing, and journalism. I think senior year, I developed like an interest in econ. And all throughout high school, I was also interested in bio and healthcare. And so a little bit about my high school experience, like I was really involved in journalism. It's something I started freshman year. And I worked very closely with a school newspaper, The Spoke. Um, I did some research and lobbying and various leadership roles in academic clubs within school for bio and healthcare. And then I played squash, which is something I still do for the club squash team. And it's always been something that's like a fun little pastime.
Okay, hi. My name is George Zhang, and I just recently graduated high school, and I was actually one of 10 clients that Pioneer Prep helped out this year. And next year I will be attending Stanford University. So for some more info about me, I'm probably going to pursue a degree in either economics and or computer science. Test scores, I had a 57 SAT. I think I had fives on I think 9 or 10 APs. And I think my interests can be sorted into three buckets. And the first of all is journalism and advocacy, second being business, economics, and government, and the third being photography. And just to dive a bit deeper on these interests, for journalism and advocacy, along with Evan, I was on my high school newspaper, The Spoke, for 4 years. I was an editor for 3, and that's actually where I met Evan. And I was also a part of a couple of advocacy organizations. For example, New Voters, which is a nationwide nonprofit dedicated to registering high school youth to vote. And if you see in the top right, that's actually me getting interviewed by HBO Max for it. So pretty cool experience. And also for business, economics, and government, I was on leadership for a couple of clubs. I did econ research at UPenn, and I interned for the PA State Senate. And finally, photography. Photography is more like a passion, hobby thing for me, but there's my Instagram for my photography, shameless plug. But for photography, I do a lot of freelancing, and I also enjoy storytelling with my camera.
Hi guys, I'm Simran. I'll be attending Princeton next year, and I just recently graduated from Downingtown STEM. And I'm thinking of majoring in econ with a possible minor in applied math. My test scores were I got a 1570 on the SAT and then a 1510 on the PSAT. And then some of my interests are econ and finance, leadership, and then writing and art. So some of my like notable extracurriculars would be I was a District 6 representative for Pennsylvania DECA, and I also was an international champion in the event Personal Financial Literacy, and I co-founded a financial literacy initiative called FinSpire. Some of my leadership roles, I was also on my school newspaper. I participated in speech and debate, and then I wrote a book called Good But Not Good Enough, which profiles the stories of women who went through gender inequality in the workforce as a way to show younger readers and younger girls that there's women who paved the path for them to be able to like forge their dreams and continue on with whatever they want, no matter the circumstances that other people faced in the past. And I've composed some pieces on the piano and also been dancing in an Indian classical dance form for the last 12 years.
All right, so that's a little bit about us. We have a few very generalized, big picture advice things that we wanted to share. And so for the following, 3 points, I think these are some things, general core tenets that we truly do believe can be very helpful in kind of guiding your high school experience.
Yeah, to start it off, one of the most important things we thought is being open to trying new things and saying yes to a lot of different things. For all of us, when we first started out high school as freshmen, so this advice is directed more towards people who maybe haven't yet finished their high school careers out. They're still like in earlier grades of high school. Just being open to trying new things and saying yes to opportunities that come your way, even if you think you might not end up like sticking with it. There's a lot of things where, and I think all the other people on this panel um, can also agree with this idea. Is there's a lot of things we joined originally that we weren't that interested in, but we ended up sticking with it, and we ended up really falling in love with it, and ended up being a really big part of what we do today. And so, for me, there was things like I didn't really know what I was doing when I got into mock trial, but then I ended up really loving it, and really pursuing it all throughout my 4 years in high school. And so that's a pretty crucial part for progressing in high school. And then just touching,
No, go ahead.
go ahead, Simran.
Okay, well, like the second takeaway would be there's no like one correct way to approach high school, to like pave your own road. I know like me personally, a lot of my friends and other classmates went about like a path of like joining a lot of like extracurriculars in school. And I personally was like always looking through like extracurriculars in a more like entrepreneurship, like innovation lens. So a lot of the clubs that I participated in, I like founded myself. And like I took on a lot of projects where like I was trying to create something and trying to like find a problem in our like society and like trying to find a way to like create something that will overcome that. And so I would definitely say like there a lot of people like especially like with social media these days have like a certain like they have like push out this like formula of a certain like number of extracurriculars that you have to do, these types of awards, this GPA, and it's really about finding your interests and finding what you're really passionate about, because that really stands out in your application and not just some formulaic approach that other successful applicants were able to do that worked well for them.
Right. And so our last point here is a little quote that I like to say. It's find the things that you love and you'll love the things that you find, right? And some of you are asking what that means. And I know Simran mentioned like the word passion. And passion's like a big buzzword in college admissions. And I think sometimes it's hard because, you know, when you're a junior, a senior, a sophomore in high school, you're not really sure what you're passionate about, right? Like it's hard to say, oh, like I really, really love doing this one thing. I think the most important thing here is though, I think it's very tempting looking at college applications like as a freshman, as a sophomore, and thinking, oh, there are certain things that I have to do. I'm just going to do the things that I see other people doing, just because I think that'll work for college apps. And I think the biggest thing, and I think all of us here who kind of made it out can agree on, is that like we all took different paths to get here. You saw those bios and you saw how different they are. There was definitely no like single pathway. And I think we ended up doing those things just because we were interested in them, right? Sure, there's always like some sort of consideration about where you're spending your time. If you only have limited like 24 hours in a day, and so you can't do every single thing that you want. Maybe you need to cut things to make it, you know, a little bit more to craft a more cohesive story just for your college application. But at the end of the day, I think all of those interests that we all had, whether it was 2, 3, or 4 interests, were things that we genuinely did enjoy. And so when you actually enjoy like writing for your newspaper, enjoy like leading bio club, like it makes like all those hours of work, putting in presentations, doing interviews, whatever it is, it makes it so much easier. And then usually I think when I see people really doing the things that they enjoy, like even if they don't end up going to a good college, they really do appreciate the process and they think that they learned a lot from the process.
Yeah, at this point, I'm sure some of you guys are wondering, you know, how we can help and what, you know, what services we provide. So the first two links are again, like one is our website, so feel free to check that out. And our QR code actually on the bottom right should lead you to the website. And the next link underneath that is to our email. So we respond pretty fast. So if you have any questions about our services or even just like a question about college applications in general, just shoot us an email. And in terms of our like, specific you know, services, we mostly offer private consulting. So this can take the form of like in a total like college admissions bundle where we help you throughout the entire process, you know, starting from brainstorming your essays all the way until, you know, writing even your waitlist letters or prepping for interviews. We also offer single meetings. So we have a lot of clients last year who may have only wanted to meet for this one college, right? Or wanted to talk about their personal statement. And we're also more than happy to help you with that as well. And our third service is actually new this year. It's like asynchronous essay editing. So, you know, as a senior high school, you still have to go through, you know, still to take a lot of APs and, you know, prep for your tests, prep for AP tests, everything like that. So this asynchronous essay editing opportunity can help you, you know, can let us help you, you know, in like a time efficient manner in which you just send us over your essays and we can edit them and we can send them back to you, right? And the last part is like this mentorship program. We did this last year as well with a few clients. Basically, college admissions is an entire process that lasts throughout, you know, all 4 years of high school and probably even into middle school as well, right? So we believe that if you can get started early, let's say like 9th grade, 10th grade, even 11th grade, and start building up a strong foundation, you know, taking the right classes, you know, doing the right, you know, things over the summer, prepping the right way for the SAT, the ACT, you know, for your, you know, for basically for everything throughout high school. If you can do that well, then you're setting yourself up for success for the college admissions process and during your senior year, right? So we truly believe that, you know, you can even set a meeting with us once a month, once every 2 months, once every 3 months. But just, you know, we can talk to you, we can talk to your student, talk to you guys, and hopefully, prepare yourself and set yourself up for success in the future. And of course, the last thing is we also offer a free 30-minute consultation. And this is a way for us to get to know you better, for you to get to know us better. And again, this is totally free. We're pretty flexible with timing as well. We do this on weekdays and on weekends as well. So just sign up using a link. This should be like a button on our website, which can direct you to our Calendly, which it's very easy to sign up. It'll take like a minute or two. And again, we're very happy to do those with, as many times as you want. Oh, and last thing is, we two of our people here, George and Simran, they actually went through the college admissions process this past year. So I wanted to give them some opportunity to talk about their experiences as well. I'll first hand it off to George because we actually worked with George for like I think for about a month last year. So we'll let him kind of talk about his experiences and what he has to say.
Yeah, sure. And thank you, Vincent. And I guess just to start off, I think my journey was pretty unique in the sense that I worked with two counselors. I had a counselor of my own throughout the summer who was an older established counselor. And I also had Pioneer Prep, which is Evan, Daniel, and Vincent, who are, younger people who just graduated high school. So I think I was able to get both ends of the experience. And I think just throughout the whole process, in regards to counseling, I think both counselors do give the help necessary needed, but I think Pioneer Prep helped me more. And I guess just to give some advice, just to give some context, I applied early decision to the Wharton School of Business at UPenn, and with my application, my entire application was created with the help of me and my older counselor, the counselor who I worked with, who was an older lady who was already established. And I was not admitted in the early decision process. So I was like, oh shoot, I have to, submit like 20 apps RD, by the time the year ends, which is like 15 days. So I called up Evan, Daniel, and Vincent because I've actually known them in high school for 2 to 3 years, and I know and I trust them to help me. And so I think we just got on the call every day throughout winter break. And they just helped me with so much. They helped me with my essays. They helped me with structuring my activities on the Common App. And they helped me with, rewording my supplementals and actually finally submitting the application. And I think just throughout the whole process, I think they offered me so much better advice than my previous counselor. And I think that's primarily from the sense that these guys, and I guess we now offer a way, way, way newer perspective in the scope of college admissions consulting, because a lot of the current counselors right now, like they said like they're a former AO at Yale, or they got into Yale, but that was in like the 1970s or the 1980s, where the college admissions climate was so much different than it is today. And I think since we've just been through the process, we're a lot more in touch with it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, George.
Yeah, and Simran, if you want to also give you a little bit of your background I don't think Simran worked with a counselor. However, she still had I think a lot of good advice for underclassmen as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think having like a team like Pioneer Prep would definitely have helped me out in terms of like support and mentorship, just because I noticed like throughout my like process, it felt very like lonely sometimes, just because that entire year it feels like you start with like editing and writing your essays, brainstorming, developing your personal statement and your activities list, and then you start hearing back from your like early schools, and then you have to start applying to regular decision schools, and then with that comes a lot of interviews, and then you have to start prepping for those interviews, actually holding them, and then comes the actual college decision. So it feels like your entire year is taken up by college admissions. And just so building a community with Pioneer Prep, I think, and having like the mentorship that they would be able to provide would have been really helpful, I think. But just in terms of like what I just recently went through, I know like especially with like diversity being a huge play in like college admissions recently, just because of like Supreme Court decisions, and also with artificial intelligence also coming into play, I think the college admissions climate has completely changed. And a lot of the essays I know that I just had to recently write talked about diversity and talked about your personal experiences and what you uniquely can bring to college campus. And so I had to find myself writing and editing essays about like unique perspectives that I faced in my life that would be more unique than other people who are also applying. And if you think about the number of people all across the world who are applying to these very same schools, who have very like similar experiences to yourself, but you're trying to stand out. It's all about how you position yourself and how you make yourself as unique as an applicant as possible. And so I think it's always helpful to have like different perspectives on it, especially since a lot of the essays that I wrote were very personal to me and, you know, like a piece of myself that I was putting out for these admissions counselors to write. And to have another person to look over that, just because it's really hard to judge your own writing sometimes, especially if you yourself authored it. I think it's always like helpful to have another pair of eyes look at it and give their perspective on it, just so that you can be as diverse and unique as possible.
Yeah. And just to add on at the end, the QR codes actually for our 30-minute consultations. It's like a Google form where you just fill out your name, some information about yourself, and a couple of dates that work for you. And I think the 30-minute consultation is a really, really beneficial thing to do, because you'll get like at least one of us, and I think you'll get at least two of us in the meeting with you, and we can just help you with whatever. Like if you're a rising senior, we can help you with, you know, your college list, you know, deciding where you want to ED, REA, or EA, and, you know, answer any other questions you may have about the process. And now we're gonna go into some of our submitted questions. I guess the first one, how do you manage your time during high school? Evan, I think you had a lot to balance on your plate during high school. Would you like to take this one on?
Yeah, sure. I think I started freshman year like with very varied interests, right? Like super wide. And so I just honestly spam joined a bunch of clubs. And I think freshman year that was fine, just because you don't have that much leadership like responsibility in any of like the things that you do. But at some point, like sophomore year, junior year, like I thought to myself, you know, I probably have to start like narrowing down the things that I do just because I cannot like possibly fit like all these things. And so in addition to just kind of prioritizing and cutting down the activities that I did and narrowing like my range essentially there. I also kind of picked up on like a few I think small tips and tricks just to like kind of make my life a little bit more efficient whenever possible. And so I think a big one is doing homework in class if possible. A lot of like teachers frankly don't use class time like as much as they should. And like they're kind of there like slowly rambling about a slide or like kind of giving you some free time to talk to your friends, and like that's kind of good time that like sure you can socialize with your friends as well, but also kind of get a start on your homework packets. It's always important to listen in class if possible, like just because when you're in school you don't have a choice, right? Like that's time you have to spend in class, even if you don't want to. And so if you're there, you might as well listen and pay attention, so that you don't have to study too much outside of school and spend time like at night when you could be, for me it was like playing squash or like doing interviews. Like instead of studying for school like schoolwork or some tests, I was just like doing stuff that I wanted to do. And then of course another big one is just not over scheduling yourself in general. I think like I'm probably a little bit guilty of that, frankly. And like it's a very hard thing to like say and then like also follow, especially if you have a bunch of varied interests, right? But it is important to like, I think in the beginning, be open to new opportunities, but at some point you do need to learn how to say no. And like when you realize you just have too much on your plate, like it's never something to be ashamed of or something to be like, oh, I'm not good enough. If you're just like, I'm like this is too much for me, I'm gonna take a step back.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. And I agree. Number two, does applying REA, EA/ED give you a more likely chance to be accepted into a college versus RD? Vincent, would you like to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So for those, I'm just going to give a quick background on what, you know, these acronyms even mean. So REA is restricted early action. So a lot of top schools, including Yale and Princeton and Harvard, basically have this thing called REA, which allows you to submit your application at basically at the very beginning of November or the end of October, and you get your decision basically in the middle of December. And if you get in, great, like you have an early acceptance, and you're not committed to go, you don't have to go, but you basically have an acceptance to that school. But the restricted early action part basically means that you can't EA to any other private universities. EA is just early action. A lot of schools offer this, including schools like Michigan, Purdue. And this basically just lets you get your decision earlier. And ED is an early decision. And what that basically means is that you're basically, if you get in, you're bound to the school. So it's basically REA, but it's like a binding contract. So schools like, for example, like Penn and Columbia, they offer ED, right? So to answer this question, REA, it depends if REA gives you a more likely chance. However, for the most part, people usually do agree that there is some edge to people who REA just because you show demonstrated interest. You show that, hey, like if you REA to Princeton, Princeton's my number one choice and this is where I want to be. EA, on the other hand, doesn't always give you a more likely chance. For a lot of bigger schools such as Michigan, they do because UMich, they want to fill up their class earlier and they see kids who EA, they want to admit them earlier, right? However, there are some other schools who EA doesn't really make a difference. And ED is probably I guess the early decision that gives you the highest chance to get into the school. So definitely ED does make a difference. I think historically, Penn ED acceptance rate was maybe like 20%, and their RD was maybe like, around like 7%. So it does make a pretty big difference if you do ED. However, that also does vary by school. There are some schools like Carnegie Mellon who say ED doesn't really matter, but for the most part, ED does give you a more likely chance to get admitted.
Great answer, great answer. And that was definitely something I was considering too while choosing whether the ED or REA to a school. And number 3, how do you build your college list? Daniel, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, I can take this one. I think this is one of actually the most important parts of your college applications, just because when you get off a good start and considering your colleges, you're really going to make sure you don't waste your time, and also make sure that you're prioritizing your actual goals first instead of just going based off of like some ranking online. I mean, there's a lot of important like tangible and empirical basis for this because while and for people that might be unfamiliar with the process, the top 10 schools in terms of ranking might just all seem like the same schools in your head. They might seem like, oh, these are just like the best schools you want to get into. But all of them actually boast their own unique profile in terms of what they offer and what they look for in school, and also the environment that they have at that school. So, for example, just taking UPenn, University of Pennsylvania, and Princeton University, while they're both like pretty high ranked in terms of all the typical college rankings, and they're definitely like some of the best schools you can get into. There's actually distinct profiles in the schools themselves because University of Pennsylvania, for example, is very pre-professionally oriented, while Princeton's very academically and very scholarshiply oriented. And so Princeton's very scholarshiply oriented. And so when you're applying as an applicant, it's important to keep that in mind because maybe you're a person who's more pre-professionally oriented. Your application boasts of like a lot of, maybe you started your own startup in high school, or you're doing a lot of business clubs, you're doing a lot of pre-professional clubs in high school. And maybe you're not as strong on the academic side, but you can definitely show that like, oh, I'm very interested in entrepreneurship and doing these XYZ in goals as my career. And so each college has its own list of things that they're looking on, that they're looking for specifically. And all of them have their own unique environments and all their own unique strengths. And so building a college list requires looking at all these factors. So in general, some advice for this is that you want to make sure that the college itself is a college you could see yourself going to. And as in like, if you didn't get into any other college on your list, you could still be happy going there. Another part is that they have a strong program that aligns with your own interests. And there's ways to research this. You can also always schedule a consultation with us. We can tell you whether or not XYZ program is strong at XYZ school. We have a lot of experience with looking that stuff up and consulting people on that. And then also another important factor in building your college list is making sure that the extracurriculars and activities you did in high school align with the type of people that they're looking for. Because you don't want to waste your time spending your application to a college that you're just not gonna mesh well with in terms of their admissions cycle.
Great answers, great answers. Number 4, someone asked, what are some essay features that differentiate students who get into T20? So I guess what makes your essay different? And I can take this one. I think the main thing that makes your essay different is is presenting yourself in a unique way. For example, because like in today's day, colleges get so many applications from so many people across the country with so many different stories. And I think the stat is right now that usually AOs at top universities, they only read your application for 4 to 5 minutes in the first round. So your application has 4 to 5 minutes for your admissions officer to actually go to bat for you, to actually push your app into the second round or in the committee. So you have 4 to 5 minutes to convince the admissions officer that you are a good fit for the school. So I think the essay is probably one of the most important parts to differentiate yourself, because it's the thing that you can change the most right now if you are a rising senior. And I think something that can really differentiate yourself is I guess it's to be different. I mean, like that's kind of obvious, but I guess just presenting yourself in a very unique way. Like, for example, for one of my Stanford essays, I literally wrote about Minecraft. I wrote about playing Minecraft, but like obviously I didn't write about, how I just like playing video games every day. I wrote about how I love playing Minecraft, and it taught me it made me discover a way to learn. So I think the rule of thumb is, I think you should find something, I guess, more niche or more unique, and then sort of spin it in a way that reflects off of something in your character. For example, the way I use Minecraft to talk about my love for learning. And I guess the final question is, what are the most important factors for college applications? Simran, would you like to take this one away?
Yeah. So obviously the most like prominent factor that people talk about is your academics. It's important that you do maintain a good GPA in your school, and then also have strong test scores, especially since a lot of schools recently, like top ones, have reverted back to test required. And but in terms of like academics too, it's called just look at your academic rigor. So like what types of classes you took, the difficulty level, how many APs or that you took, and in terms of like IBs, also like what specific like IB classes you took in the higher level. And counselors have to submit a class report. So basically it talks about your class in general, what classes are offered, and like how many, like on average, like how many APs an average student takes. So that way each admissions counselor, because obviously like each academic environment in every high school is different, just like I know like Stoga's environment and like STEM's environment is super different. So that class like report will give context to the admissions counselor about your specific school. So they're not comparing you to people with completely different academic environments. They're comparing you within your own school. So it gives you that competitive advantage. So that's why it's important that you take hard classes. Like, not taking easy classes and getting A's in all of them won't necessarily grant you admission to top schools. It's taking a variety of classes that you are interested in that are in a more difficult level. And still performing well that they're looking for. And then also having good, unique ECs. There's a lot of awards that colleges really like scholarships also, and just in general, like specifically really prestigious awards, because if that prestigious like award has already been gifted to you, then you probably will be able to get into those like similar like competitive schools. And then besides those, it comes down to essays, because at some point when you're applying to top schools, every applicant seems to have really great test scores in GPA and ECs. So it comes down to how much of the essay talked about you and how you were able to differentiate yourself, like George was talking about. So it's about making an essay that's as unique as possible, that also shares features about you that prove to the school that you would be a good fit for them. Like Daniel was talking about, each school has a type of profile or an applicant that they're looking for in terms of like diversity. Like no school is the same. You can't just like use the same essays for every single school necessarily. You have to try to like differentiate yourself. So yeah, that's what I would say the important factors are.
Great advice, great advice. And we just have one more slide with 4 more questions. And somebody asked, what do you do over the summers? And I guess to answer this, I guess we can have each of us just give like a brief like description of what they did in their respective summers. I guess starting with me, in the summer of my freshman year to 10th grade to sophomore year, I just interned at the YMCA. I was a volunteer tennis coach. Wait, I didn't intern, I mean volunteer, my bad. And from sophomore year to junior year, I rode over the summer and I just did SAT prep. So it wasn't anything crazy, but I still, I guess, did stuff. And from junior year to senior year summer, that was the eventful one. I interned for the state senate. I did some research at Penn, and I obviously wrote all my essays and grinded out my college apps.
Yeah, I could go next. So for my summers, Ninth grade summer, 10th grade summer is mainly just, just having fun, also just like studying, wherever possible. I think I prepped a lot for the Olympiads, as well as just like preparing for the next few classes over the summer. 11th grade summer, I did a little bit of research and I also went to a summer program called LBW. And then and then also like started writing essays for college.
I
Yeah,
think
for
my
me,
freshman year, you go ahead, Daniel.
okay, cool. For me, my freshman year, um that was my COVID year, so I didn't do too much my freshman year. But my sophomore, like the summer after my sophomore year, I worked a job, and I focused on studying for the SAT. I self-studied for that, and then my junior year, I did Pennsylvania Governor School. It was a summer program I applied to, in the winter of my junior year. So a lot of the summer programs they open up around then, and those are super important for demonstrating just an affinity um for demonstrating affinity for some programs kind of demonstrates your affinity for achieving high achievingness and also taking advantage of all opportunities available to you. And so in my senior summer, I did an internship.
All right. I think my freshman and sophomore summers are pretty similar in that I was like doing virtual internships just because like COVID was tough at the time. And also just training for squash since I was like still thinking about getting recruited at that point. And then junior summer, similar to Daniel, I just did like a summer research program in Boston, and kind of traveled around a little bit.
I spent most of my summers researching. I did a lot of writing my summer before junior year, and then summer before senior year, I obviously worked on college apps, and then I also attended some leadership conferences.
All valid, all valid. So someone asked, when do I start preparing? Evan, do you want to take this away?
Sure. Like it's never too early to start thinking about college in some respect, right? I think there is like some maybe potential for harm if you start thinking about it too early and you start getting overly focused on doing everything in high school just for college. But I think even like as middle school kind of comes to a close and you start thinking about choosing classes for high school, maybe which high school you're going to go to, if you're thinking like private, public, the discussion starts there. And so starting in eighth grade, I think like just thinking about what classes like I was going to take the next year was my first step. And then like in the first few years of high school, a lot of it is just about planning what extracurriculars you're interested in, keeping up your good grades, things like that. And then obviously later on, junior year, senior year, you're thinking a lot more about specific college application stuff. So essays, college list creation, finding, recommendation letter people. And so a lot of the specifics come later, but a lot of the like foundation, a lot of the groundwork is built earlier on.
That's true. That's true. And how do I find the right college fit for me, Vincent?
Yeah, of course. Also, just had a quick heads up. These are our last two questions. So, Evan, everyone, feel free to like start some many questions in the chat. You can like DM us privately, or just like send it to everyone in the chat. But yeah, so I know Daniel touched upon this, briefly already. So I'm not going to spend too much, time into it. But I think visiting the college is really important. So your summer before your senior year, so junior summer or even sophomore or your 10th grade summer, you can spend time, going across, the East Coast or the West Coast and start looking at these colleges and see, do you like the campus? Do you like the overall vibe, right? And that's something that's actually pretty important, like finding a college that you'll actually be happy at. The next thing is probably, academically, right? If you want to pursue computer science, for example, there are schools that have very strong computer science programs that may not have, very strong other programs, right? So one college that comes to mind is like UMD. UMD is a very, very strong computer science program. So UMD might be on your list, but if you're a business student, UMD probably won't be on your list, right? So looking at the academics, looking at, visiting these colleges, seeing if you really like them, I think for me, those two are the most important factors for deciding where to go.
True, true. And finally, to end off, what do college interviews typically look like? Simran?
Yeah, so basically, most colleges will send you the interview request. So they'll have an alumni in your local area reach out to you. And some schools will allow you to express interest in these alumni interviews, and other schools will just automatically consider you for them. And it's up to you to accept or deny them. But once you either meet in person or Zoom. A lot of my interviews were held in over Zoom, but I know a lot of other people also had in-person interviews. And so basically it's just a way for them to get to know you on a way where you weren't able to express yourself in your college application, because those can obviously be very constraining. So they want to get to know you as a person. They want to get to know you, like your interests, who you are, like your personality, like any like funny stories that you might have about yourself. And also something that I did before every interview was just to get to know the school, and also go like on a virtual tour of the school, and then also find like specific programs or clubs or professors that I would want to work with. And then I would just have them in my head, so that when they asked me why I was considering this school, because they also want to know why you are interested in it, I could just list off those reasons and like show interest and show that I really did want to attend that school. And then a lot of them will also have you ask questions about that school. So I would go in with a prepared list of questions that I would change up based on like what school that I was looking at with their like various features. And so honestly, it's a very like casual experience. It's a way for you to get to know the school, and the school to also get to know you.
Great, great. And I
Great.
think that ends up our session of submitted questions. And now on to the live Q&A session.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm just be moderating this live Q&A session. Again, as questions pop up, as you think of anything that we might have missed that you want to hear about, feel free to drop them, DM us, you can DM us individually if you're uncomfortable asking the question to the whole group. But also feel free to drop it in the chat for the good of the overall group. But we'll be answering. So we'll starting from the top of what I see from my direct messages. The first question I see is, do private high schools offer advantages over public ones, and how? And so if anybody wants to take this one, feel free to.
All right, yeah, I can take this one. I remember when I was in 8th grade, approaching 9th grade, I was really seriously considering maybe going to private school. At the time, that was mostly because I was playing squash like pretty seriously. And so I thought, maybe going to a private school might like relieve some of the academic stress at Stoga and give me some more time to train. I think like that's one of the primary benefits I've seen from like a lot of the students who choose private schools and switch over for high school. Some of the other benefits I think it's just like a smaller class size typically. Like if you look at some of the private schools around us, like EA, Haverford, Germantown, whatever it is, they usually have much smaller number of students. And what that allows for is just like a much greater like level of increased attention and care to each individual student. So like their counselors will spend more time on you. They'll have probably better connections to some of like these admissions officers at colleges. Um, they'll just be able to give you so much more attention there. And so that I think is probably like the primary edge. There are some other secondary factors that it really depends on which private school it is, right? So like say Shipley, I think is maybe one of the less academically rigorous ones around here. And so if you were to go to Shipley, like it's a little bit probably less pressure academics wise versus like EA. I like they still have like a decent number of APs. I think like academically, like they're somewhat comparable to like Stoga or Downingtown. And so it really does depend on the individual private school. But of course, like the biggest limiting factor there is just cost. Like these schools, everyone knows cost like a good amount of money, 40K a year maybe. And it just in general, like I think I know kids who ended up going to private school. Obviously, all of us here ended up at public school and seemingly did fine. So I think either way is an option, but like private school definitely can offer some tangible benefits, especially if you like seeking that like increased attention.
Yeah, thank you. Very insightful. The next question is, I noticed that some of you guys mentioned DECA a few times, and I was wondering if there's any advice that you could, if there's any advice you could give for preparing the competition and actually competing. So this is a very like specific question about an extracurricular, but it's pretty common across different schools, so it could be pretty relevant to a lot of people. George, want to take this one?
Yeah, sure, sure. And I was also thinking the ICDC champion should also add on at the end. So I guess just to add off, I competed in DECA for 2 years and I made international both years. So I think I can espouse a bit of information. So I first started in my sophomore year and then in my junior year. And I guess the way I prepped was so both years I was in a partner event. So DECA has two types of events when you're doing a case study. And the first type of event is a solo event. You're just by yourself. The second type of event is a duo event. You're with your partner. And then I guess for some of you who don't know how DECA works, the case study portion, they're called role plays. And you basically go on site for the competition, and then the judge, you're handed a prompt, and then the prompt is sort of it's like a business case study. It gives you a scenario, it gives you some things that they want to see out of you. For example, like you're the marketing manager of a local dentistry. Please come up with some ways to attract the youth demographic to your business. And then you sort of just come up with a solution, and then you present it to the judge in like a 10-minute presentation. So the way me and my partner prep for it, we just practice a lot. I think practice is the most important part, because for a lot of people, DECA is an entirely new experience. So, like when I first came into it, I had no idea how to give like a business presentation. So me and my partner, we found like other people who were also competing, like other people in our school's chapter, and we sort of just practiced together. We had them judge us and we judge them, so we could bounce ideas off each other, bounce speaking styles, and bounce other tips and strategies. Simran, do you want to add on?
I think you covered most of it, but I did film a YouTube video on how to do a role play with like my like advisor. So if you guys want to check it out, just search up like DECA role play, like personal financial literacy, and you can see how I like approach my role plays.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much. The next question we're going to be looking at is, do Olympiads matter to college apps if you don't make camp?
Yeah, I can take this question. So in high school, I mainly involved myself with 2 Olympiads, and there were USICO and the AMCs. So for me, I qualified for the AME 4 times, like 9th grade through 12th grade. And if you don't know what like the AMCs are, it's just basically like the math competition, and USICO is like the computer science competition, right? And camp is just basically like the term that's like used to like talk about like the people who are the best at these competitions. So in the AMCs, there's a camp called MOP, and MOP will probably usually accept around 70 people a year. So the 70 kids like from the entire nation in high school who are the best at math will go to this MOP camp, right? And like every single Olympiad, including like the chemistry Olympiads, biology Olympiads, all these Olympiads all have camps, but those are extremely difficult, right? So the short answer is definitely not. You do not have to be at camp to get to good college. In fact, that if you do make a camp, you're pretty much almost guaranteed any school you want to go to, just because it's just so difficult to get into these camps. But yeah, I mean, like for me, I just made AME, which was like usually around the top 5% of the AMC takers, which isn't like spectacular. And I think it had a pretty big impact on my college applications. And I know Daniel and Evan both did like biology Olympiads as well, and they did pretty well. But I don't think either of them made camp. And I'm sure they both contributed pretty big to their applications.
Yeah, definitely. Next question is, what is the best way to figure out the unique profile of a college?
I guess I can take this one. I think primarily one strategy I employed while I was applying to colleges and seeing like what the colleges were like was I hit up a lot of current students at the colleges. Like for example, like at Penn, I called up Vincent. I was like, yo, Vincent, like what's Penn like? Like give me like the insider scoop. Because a lot of the times, like the information that you're gonna find on the college's website, I think isn't entirely representative of what their culture is actually like. And I think getting some firsthand primary sources to actually tell you about what the college is like is the best idea. And even like if you don't know like anybody at the colleges, you can always like try to find them on social media. Like for example, I actually use LinkedIn to find a lot of current students at some schools where I didn't actually personally know anyone. And I just shot them like a quick like DM. I was like, hey, can we hop on like a 5 to 10 minute call and where I can ask you some questions about the school? And a lot of them were really willing to do it because, just like us, they also been through the process and they want to help out as much as possible.
Exactly. The next question is, can you provide guidance on how to create a resume that effectively highlights my achievements? Does anybody talk about that?
Yeah, I can take it. So for resumes, at least, I know Penn, they have templates online. Before, you used to be able to download them, but I'm not sure if you can download them anymore. But you can try to copy them. I'm sure there's other templates online as well. But the big idea is to keep them usually to 1 or 2 pages. So I know some colleges, I'm assuming you're asking about resumes like specifically for college applications. So I'll answer them in that way. But some colleges ask for resumes. Honestly, they're like not important at all. Like I don't think you're like submitting a resume will actually benefit you in any significant way. However, if you're curious, I'll keep it to around 2 pages. I'll try my best to talk about stuff that you maybe didn't mention in your activity section. So you're already given like 10 activities to list and to discuss. But I mean, you might have some extra activities that you did in your free time, which you want to talk about as well. So that is kind of the part where your resume comes in, where you can discuss some more activities in detail. Talk about some more of the achievements you had in your activities. At the end of the day, resumes don't matter too much. But if you do want to find a good format for them, you can search up like UPenn resumes, template, and it should be on there.
Great, thank you, Vincent. Our next question is direct message. Can you provide, sorry, this one is actually, how many hours of sleep did you typically get per night during the school year? This seems a quick one. I can say for myself, I probably averaged around 6 or 7, but everyone's to add on.
For me, there's definitely been up days and down days. I say like the latest I've slept is probably around 3 when, there's like a week with like a lot of tests. I have to cram for that. And I think the earliest I've slept is probably around 11 or 12. So it wasn't really pretty for me. Yes.
I can go on my experience. I think freshman year and sophomore year I had like a very good sleep schedule, frankly. Like past COVID, like it kind of started getting messed up. But like junior and senior year, I think like I was probably average sleeping around like 1 or 2, and then like obviously waking up for school. So like maybe 6 hours, and then it's like on select occasions, I think like I would sleep later, like 3 a.m. Like George said, a few times, maybe like once or twice a semester, like if things got really serious, like I pulled like an all-nighter here or there. But like would definitely not recommend those, like not a good long-term strategy, not very viable. So I would recommend prioritizing your sleep if you could.
Cool. Next question is pros and cons of a liberal arts school versus a normal college/university.
Yeah, I can take this. And I guess for some context, I attended Swarthmore University's Admitted Students Day, and I guess I can give some like context about that. So I think the main difference between an LAC or a liberal arts college versus your traditional US university, I think it's mainly the culture, because for LACs, for liberal arts colleges, it's a lot more academic focused. It's not really pre-professional, and everyone there seems genuinely interested in learning. And I guess in terms of academia, like for example, I'm pretty sure Swarthmore produces the most PhD grad students in the country, because everyone there is really, really interested in learning. And I guess then rather like I guess sort of pursuing a career after college, or like just having their entire mindset thought on finding a job. And I think more socially, I think liberal arts colleges are, I guess I would say, a lot more, I guess the social scene, I don't want to like use this word, but I guess the social scene seems a lot more dead compared to your traditional university. Because I was actually talking to a few like Swarthmore students and people at LACs like around the area, and they were like, yeah, like there's not really that many parties here. Everyone just really does their own thing. And of course, like if that's your thing, like if you don't like going to parties, if you don't like super large social events, then the LAC would be a perfect fit for you. But I guess if you sort of do like to go out on Friday nights or go to parties, then maybe I guess consider some more traditional US universities. So I think it all comes down to your personal preference and what you want to look for in the school.
Great, thank you. And then the next question is, do you use any resources to modify your essay? If yes, which company is good for it? So assume this is asking about essay editing.
Sure, I can take this one. I think amongst us, it's probably like split half and half about like in terms of who was using essay counselors or not. For me personally, like I worked with the same lady that like George had mentioned earlier, the older counselor. I think for my process, like I thought I was like a decently technical writer. And so I don't think I was looking as much for like technical writing, like grammar help, sentence structure help. But it was like more someone to bounce off ideas, and sort of guide me in like general, like broader topic directions. And so I thought she was okay for that. Like obviously George had a little bit of a different experience with her. But in terms of like essay editors in general, right? Like there's obviously a lot of them out there. Some of them are like older people, some of them are students freshly graduated. But I think like obviously the benefit that we bring just is that like that youthful aspect, and like having written these essays ourselves, like having gone through like I've probably read like 100, 200 college essays, or like personal statements alone, right? Like in terms of supplements, like countless more. But like I think just reading all these essays and like being so close to the process, as opposed to like being very far removed, like some of like these older counselors, really adds some tangible benefit. And so I think based off, our past results this year, and our client feedback so far, I think we've done a pretty decent job with the essay editing. And so if you're interested, I would definitely recommend at least like signing up for that 30-minute consultation and talking a little bit further just about, future of essay editing there.
Cool, yeah. Thank you for answering that. Our next question is going to be, what role in the application essays or personal statements, what role do the application essays or personal statements play in the admissions process? What is the purpose of the interview?
Okay, so I can take that one. So, in terms of like personal statement and essays, this is like the most like personal part of your application. Like it's the way your admissions counselor is going to get to know you, through like what you like put out. So a lot of the supplementals, I would say like this year, a lot of them like focused on diversity, but then also on like extracurriculars or an experience that really shaped your life. And then a lot of schools also will have like short answers or like these like unique takes where it allows you to be like really creative. Like for example, I think it was Princeton that asked the question like what brings you joy, and you had to answer it in 50 words. And so it just really like gives you the opportunity to like figure out like things that you wouldn't be able to put in like a Common App like activities list. And you kind of like are able to like frame it in a way that appeals to your admissions officer. And then I would say like the purpose of an interview also is like very similar to what like an essay does, but in a more like verbal format. So whereas like an essay, you're presenting something that you're writing, so they're also seeing how good of a writer you are, how your structure is, how your grammar is, and also your clarity and your flow. The interview is a way for you to like talk about yourself and also show like interest in the school. And I was talking about this like a little bit earlier, but it's important that you know the school, know different aspects of how you would fit into the environment, so that your interviewer knows that you are truly interested in the school that you want to go to. And also like ask them like questions about what they're doing in college, or a lot of them are alumni. I mean, they're all alumni. So ask them like how that college has help them find job opportunities or maybe like grad school opportunities, and what they've been able to accomplish because of the school that they went to.
Great, thank you. My next question I have is, how do you study for and when do you start studying for an Olympiad like USACO or AMC?
Yeah, so I can take this one. And I'll first kind of just talk about Olympiads in general and then kind of dive into my own experiences. But for Olympiads in general, Olympiads are necessary to get into like a good college, right? Like I think that's kind of like what I thought in the beginning, like, oh, you have to do Olympiads because a lot of like, Asians, they do Olympiads, they do these AMCs and they do very well and they get into like that top school, right? But I think that's not really true anymore. I think that there's many different ways you can get into these top schools. So I won't limit yourself and just be like, I have to do well in Olympiads. However, that's not to say that they don't help. Like they definitely do help. And I would do them if you actually enjoy what you did, or what you do and what you're learning, right? So for me, I started doing math back in sixth grade. I did like the math counts competitions, and I worked pretty hard, and I qualified for the states a few times in seventh and eighth grade. And going to ninth grade, I basically just didn't really study for math throughout high school too much because I already had a pretty strong foundation for middle school, and I just kind of like qualified for AME every year. Study a little bit before the competition, but that was basically it. For USACO, I started really getting into computer science around like ninth and 10th grade. And, I just kind of studied on my own time, worked with my parents, found like, I think I took a USACO class with one of my friends' dads. And, having like a good math foundation was pretty helpful as well. So it came pretty easy to me. And I just kind of, so I really enjoyed it as well. I just like spent time working hard. But if you are looking for more like, like very specific, again, a very specific answer. If you want me to recommend a book to you or something, like feel free to email us or schedule a consultation. We're more than happy to like recommend a book or something to you as well.
Yeah, exactly. My next question is, um, is publishing an academic paper in high school a big edge?
Sure, I think big is a very subjective term, right? But like in general, it's always it's obviously a very impressive accomplishment to like truly publish a paper. Now I like by publish, like I'll assume like peer reviewed journal, right? With like maybe a decent impact factor. Um, but like even if like it doesn't get published, even if it's like something that you self-publish, or like maybe something that you just submit to a journal, submit to a science fair, any sort of like academic research usually is like a very strong sign. A lot of people do research these days, but like I think research like really varies in like quality, and so like you could be like a lab assistant just like doing like little like pipettes and like cleaning like test tubes, right? That's like very different from like being the like co-author author of your own paper, and kind of like coming up with these novel ideas and actually discovering something new. So I would say in general, if you're interested in like a bit like able to publish an academic paper and kind of do that, it's definitely a very impressive thing.
Cool. Our next question is from Rohan. Is it worth it to spin your activities and experiences toward a different, less competitive major, even though it might be less strong of an application? This one's definitely an interesting question.
Yeah, that's definitely a hard hitter. I think there could be a strategy to be made out of this, but I think you have to be really cautious in the sense that you don't want to misrepresent yourself into like somebody who's not actually interested in the major that you're applying for, because that's the biggest red flag in college admissions. If they see that if they can sense that you're not actually passionate about it, then they're gonna reject you. But I think it is worth to look at to I think like one alternative strategy which is similar to it is sort of finding an intersection between two majors. For example, Evan was able to find a pretty unique intersection between journalism slash writing and biology, and like because there's a lot of people in the country who are who want to go into pre-med, who are very strong applicants for a biology major, and there's also a lot of strong applicants throughout the country who are really strong writers who have only who have a majority of writing extracurriculars. But Evan was able to combine both of it together and say that he's passionate in both healthcare and writing. And I think me personally, I think that's a really unique combination. And I think it definitely was able to give him an edge into the admissions process, because when colleges are trying to admit students, they're not trying to admit well-rounded students, but rather a well-rounded class. So they're trying to find students who are all strong in their own respective fields and their own respective disciplines. So if you're able to be different, if you're able to differentiate yourself and still be a really strong applicant, then you will have a pretty significant leg up in the process. That's my opinion. And I guess for me, I was able to combine economics and public policy, which I guess are two more, I guess it's a more common combination, but I guess in the end of the day, it still worked.
Thank you for that. And definitely a great point about combining like your different interests to make yourself unique, because that in and of itself can become its own spike. My next question is, so I have a question here. I can answer this one. Does ISEF actually help, or is it just a bunch of parents doing the research for their children? And so that is obviously interesting question, but from my experience, I've known a couple of people who've done ISEF. I think it definitely is a balance between those two different demographics, because there are some kids who really put in the work during high school and performed well and really took advantage of the opportunities they had to do research. But there are some who really did kind of just leverage their nepotism. They had a parent who was already really into research, and kind of just built off a project they might have already had. I think if the reason why this question is asked is because they're wondering if they should do ISEF. I think if you were able to do ISEF, which is, by the way, ISEF is a competition hosted by, I believe, Regeneron. It's a very famous science competition for high schoolers, and probably the most famous one and the most prestigious one. And a lot of high schoolers do that in hopes of building their applications and showing interest in science. If you're able to do ISEF and really be competitive in it, I definitely would recommend it. But you really have to get started really early, like starting in freshman year already, because those projects takes a long time. And it's not worth it to start super late if you can't pump something out that has tangible takeaways. Next question is, what is your biggest regret from your high school years?
You guys want to popcorn for this one?
Yeah, we can have more than one person answer this.
Okay. I guess for me, my biggest regret was, I guess, not starting earlier, because I feel like a lot of people say it's like bad to have college in your mind, like right, like throughout the entirety of high school, and that you should really enjoy yourself and enjoy childhood. But I think after my 4 years, I think it's possible to do both. And I think a lot of the process towards like going to like applying to college isn't just like grunt work. It isn't just like tedious stuff. It's actually like, building off of your ECs, building relationships with people. And I think for a lot of people, that can be a really meaningful thing. So just to cap off the question, I think my biggest regret is not starting, researching the process, not starting a lot of this research, a lot of this looking into like colleges and stuff earlier. And so I ended up having to play a lot of catch up in my later years, which was another reason like why my sleep schedule was still messed up.
Yeah,
I
I
think
could go. Oh, Evan, go ahead. Evan, go ahead.
okay. I think like a smaller one for me was like freshman or yeah, freshman year I had like the opportunity to take like computer science principles, and I thought it'd be like a little bit too much. I ended up not taking a CS class until like senior year when like frankly I was like tuned out. I think it would have been beneficial to take like a computer science class earlier on, just because even if you're not like a CS major, it's like a pretty ubiquitous skill to have these days. And I think on like a larger scale, I think like senior year, especially, but maybe some of the other times too. Like I think I was just overloaded a little bit, like too much, and kind of like lost track of like other important things in life, whether that's like family, friends, your sleep schedule, for example, is a big one. And I think just realizing a little bit after college, as I'm looking back at like how crazy it was, realizing that like it really shouldn't be that unidimensional, even when you're in the thick of it, was probably like one of the biggest things I'd go back and change if I could.
Yeah, and for me, I think my biggest regret is probably during senior year. So a little bit of background, I ED to Wharton, I got deferred, and I got in the regular round. But I think one thing that I kind of realized like very late into that process, like kind of near December, was that I really didn't truly understand the college admissions process. Like for me, I also had hired a counselor, and I think the entire time I felt pretty comfortable like writing my essays. The questions are pretty simple, right? I wrote my essays, I filled out the extracurricular sheets, right? And I just sent off my applications, right? But I think that like I didn't truly understand that college applications are very different from like just writing an essay, right? Like if a school assigns you a paper to write and you can write that out and like if you write like 100 words in like 30 minutes, shoot it back and you'll get an A, right? College admissions is completely different, and I didn't realize that until it was very very late, like around the middle of December. And at that point, I had to redo my Common App. I like rewrote a lot of my supplementals. I spent most of my winter breaks like stressing out writing college apps for like, 10, 12, 13, 14 hours a day, right? So I think regret is probably just not like actually like, spending more time and really figuring out what the college admissions process was like. And it's, or even like finding a better, or talking to, more people, asking more upperclassmen, people already in college for more advice. So I think just like, my senior year, that's probably my biggest regret.
Um, if if anyone else has anything to add, feel free to. Simran, I think unless you don't have anything to add. Okay, cool. So we'll move on to our next question. Um, is there any tips in applying to scholarships during college applications? And Simran, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So, some scholarships open up like before like senior year starts. And so there's just like early application like deadline, so your scholarships are like considered like earlier. But then a lot of scholarships you will like see like opening up during the school year. So what I was able to do is like repurpose a lot of like the essays that I'd already written for my schools and then use them for my scholarships. One of the scholarships that I applied to was the Coca-Cola scholarship, and we actually, a lot of us are like regional finalists for that. But it's like there's like different phases to like almost every scholarship. You don't like automatically get that scholarship, but at least for like Coke, you had to initially like submit like a sort of like EC list, and then you have to submit multiple essays and then go through an interview, and then finally you're selected as that scholarship recipient. And then there's also like a lot of like local scholarships that you can apply to that don't take as much time as like the more like prestigious or like bigger scholarship programs, and you're still able to get like a good amount of money to put towards your tuition.
Thanks so much, Simran. And just to add to that, if you are balancing both like scholarships applying and the application timeline, especially during senior year, it can get overwhelming. And just like a little plug, we do also offer like guidance and support and advising for scholarship applications. A lot of them require really long essays that are kind of unique from the college application, and so we can also support you in that. Our next question we have is,
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
Like talking about like the supporting for scholarships part, like I think we can primarily help with the Coke scholarship because me, Simran, and Evan are both finalists for that. So we I guess we have some more info on how the in and outs of the whole thing works.
Yeah. Thanks, George. Our next question is pros and cons of choosing an athletic career. I think that's asking like kind of do sports matter in high school. I think that's what the question is getting at. If anybody wants to touch on that.
I can answer. Okay, so like if you're interpreting it the way Daniel's saying, like in general, like is it good to do sports? I think like it's a good thing to do, right? Like I think leadership in like some sport, whether like Vincent I know is like captain of like the cross country and tennis teams. And so like even though he wasn't a recruited athlete, that obviously brought a lot of leadership to his application, and it really adds like a new angle. So definitely a good thing. I think if you're asking whether like it's worth it to commit very early on to like trying to get recruited and like kind of putting your sport first above all, there are some pros and cons of that, right? So like the pros obviously are like if you truly are good enough and you're able to get like a secured spot, like it's basically guaranteed. So if you're like the number one tennis player in the country, like you would basically have a guaranteed spot to like any Ivy League you wanted to go to, as long as your academics were like somewhat good enough. And then like you wouldn't have to like go through the whole like typical application process. You would have like your own like kind of recruitment process, right? The danger there is just kind of putting all your eggs in one basket. And so like I've seen kids who like worked really hard for like all the years leading up to kind of like that junior year important recruitment season, and like maybe they get an injury, maybe they just like don't do well at a few tournaments for whatever reason. Maybe like COVID hits and they're just not able to like go out there and compete, whatever it is. If there ends up something like getting in your way, and you dedicated all your time and money kind of to sports for like the early years of your high school, it can be kind of challenging to kind of bounce back from that and then add new dimensions to your college application if all your attention was sort of focused in one area.
Cool. Thanks, Evan. Our next question is asking about the early application versus regular decision, I'm assuming. We talked about that earlier a bit, but Vincent, do you want to clarify some stuff about that?
Yeah, I can just clarify it real quick. So basically, early decisions that usually it's better to apply earlier if you have the essays prepared, because again, you get your decision earlier and they tend to accept, more people and have a higher acceptance rate during the early round. However, I know some people, if you don't have your essays prepared, or like let's say you're under a very strict financial like restraints, like for example, if you ED Penn and they don't give you like however much aid you can't go, that might be a better idea to not do an early round application. However, I almost always recommend you to apply early to most of your schools. Like every single school that does have like EA, you should apply to EA.
Thank you. Our next question is, what is a good way to find internships?
I guess I can take this. So for internships, I guess for at least for high schoolers, a lot of internships don't have like a set recruiting process or a set application process. So if you want to find internships, you really have to branch out yourself and I guess utilize your network or sort of cold email around. And that's sort of what I did last year. And I was actually able to get both my state senate internship and my research assistant position at Penn, both through cold emailing. So for cold emailing, you basically just it's basically just emailing whoever you see on like the website or the website of like the firm you want to work at or the school you want to research at, and you just shoot them an email. And I guess for some general like rules of thumb on cold emailing, I don't want to talk too much about it, but you really want to keep it precise and you want to keep it brief. Because these people, they probably get a lot of cold emails. So they probably don't want to like read like a 3 paragraph essay on why you want to work for them. So I guess keeping it precise, keeping it brief is a really good way. I guess another strategy I think you should employ is actually creating a resume for yourself. And I guess typically for resumes, limit it to 1 page and highlight the experience that you think will be relevant to the position that you're trying to go for. And and you also want to attach that resume onto your email. And I guess for the framework of the email, you just say like, hi, like my name is this, I'm a student at Conestoga High School, and I'm really interested in learning more about this industry. And I was wondering if you were offering any, unpaid positions in X, Y, and Z. And also ask them to like set up like a 5 to like 15-minute call over Zoom, because that's a great way to build like a rapport on them. And if you're able to get that call, then that means 80% of the chance, 80% of the time, like they want you to, like they're interested in you, and like the call is just a formality for them to see like how you are as a person and to interact with you.
Thank you, George. And then our final question is going to be, how can I manage my time properly when it comes to writing the personal statement and supplementals so I'm well prepared and can produce good quality essays this year? Simran, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So, I personally had my personal statement done by the end of the summer. I started writing it around June, and then I went through like several drafts, and I had one that I was happy with by the end of the summer, but I did make some tweaks after my like early action like round for my regular decision schools. But I would say in terms of like supplementals, like right now, just because like August 1st hasn't opened yet, and like some schools might still be changing their essay prompts, something that I would like really recommend is like building your college list, having like a spreadsheet of all the colleges that you're looking at, and then researching like their different application deadlines and their essays. Like I know, for example, like for UMich, if you want to apply to Ross, they have a separate like portfolio that you need to submit, and that's also required to be submitted by November 1st. So there's all these like different like deadlines and like certain components of applications that needed to be like submitted by those deadlines that you need to take into consideration. So having a spreadsheet and would be really helpful for that. Also, just like in terms of like managing your supplementals, a lot of them are very similar, especially when you're looking to apply to like schools like Harvard, Yale, like Stanford. Like they have a lot of the same like essays, kind of just like framed differently. So if you're able to create like a nice like sample like base essay, you're able to like alter them and like change like the specific features for like the different schools. Also, if you like for like the YS essays, if you have like a certain like template or like formula that you use in terms of like what you're looking for in each like college that you're writing about in your YS essays, it makes the process go by like super quick. But yeah, I would definitely like recommend like creating a schedule and just like managing like how much like essays you want like 1 week, or like set goals for yourself and just try to like work on college maybe like for just a little bit like every single day, especially like during the school year too, while still like maintaining your like senior year grades.
Thanks so much, Simran. Definitely a huge point on timing during that patient process. Evan, do you want to take the next slide?
Yeah, we can sort of conclude while Jiyoung is typing out his question.
Yeah, so just like kind of just like a last final, overview, like we really do think these 30-minute consultations are a really good idea, just because like they're completely free and you can ask them any questions you want. It's basically a Q&A session, but you have a one-on-one with one of us and we can go through, anything you want. But previously we like crafted a college list for, one of our clients. We worked on one of our clients to discuss like where is his best school to ED. I think he was choosing between 3 schools, and we helped him, narrow it down to like this one school that he wanted to go to. So like, again, like really take the time. I think George has sent the form into the chat. So again, it's completely free. There's no, there's no harm in doing this. And I also think that you can also get some more, color into the college admissions process. It really is more complex than everyone thinks. Like for me, again, like my regret was just not knowing about this beforehand and only learning about it so late when I had already gone deferred for my dream school, right? So please take the time. It's completely free. And again, our emails check out our website, our emails listed right there. Shoot us any questions. We're pretty responsive. We try to respond within like, a few hours and maximum like 24 hours. But yeah, thank you guys for joining the call. Did we know if Jiyoung ended up sending his question?
No, I don't think so. But just to add on, these 30-minute consultations are like a huge help, and they are kind of also a way if you are currently applying to college this fall. If you are applying to college this fall and you're looking for a counselor, this is a way to see like if we're a good fit for you and you're a good fit for us. Because this is really a way to just kind of dip your toes in the water, see how we work with you, and get to know us a bit more in our consulting style, how we're going to coach you through the college application process, and any specific questions relating to you, we can help answer. And it really is a way to see like how we are different from a lot of the current outdated market strategies on the college application. For example, my brother, when he was applying, like he was only he's only 6 years older than me, so he was applying 6 years before me. But even then, just within the 6 years, it changed so much, the college application cycle. And so, we're really just offering this so that you guys can see like we really are trying to help you guys. We realize like a lot of these college counselors are really just after are kind of like looking to like take these clients on without realizing the changes, and they're really after a lot of people who aren't really doing the research in the college counseling and are just willing to kind of fork up their money without seeing what they're actually getting out of their money and what out of their packages. And at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward to the colleges, because we ourselves were there, our parents were there. Our parents felt the same pressure that your parents are feeling, or if you're a parent that you're feeling right now, and we felt the same pressure too, just to succeed and do our best, and just not to look back on college applications with regrets. And so we really want to make sure that you guys don't look back with regret, and make sure that you guys are really putting your best foot forward. And so that's why we're offering these, so that you guys can get to know us and get to know how we can help you. And so I don't see a question from Jiyoung, but if anybody has any last minute questions, we can stay behind for like 5 minutes. If anybody does have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. Also, if you have more questions and you can't think of them on the spot, maybe think of them a few days after, feel free to email us. We're happy just to respond to questions or set up, again, in the 30-minute consultation, we're happy to set up a time to talk through any of your questions, any more like tailored questions specifically to you. But again, if you are a senior applying this fall, we really strongly encourage you to look into us, because we really believe that a lot of these other college counselors are really just after your money, and they're not actually going to help you. And that's been our past experience with college counselors, that they really just don't really know what they're doing, because it's changed so much. So please feel free to fill out that form and ask any more questions you have.
All right. Thank you, Daniel. And thank you guys for coming. Have a good night. We're always there for contact via the Gmail or via like the Google form link. That's both in the chat and at that QR code. But with that, again, if you have any questions, please stay behind. Otherwise, thanks again for coming, guys.
Yeah, so to those who are still here, again, like feel free to unmute, turn on your cameras, or even just like ask in the chat if you have any like last minute questions. I'm probably only gonna stay for like 5 to 10 minutes. So if you guys don't have any other questions, feel free to like, enjoy the rest of your night.